I'm curious now what the 49ers are going to do at quarterback next season, because for the second year in a row, Kyle Shanahan has essentially closed the door on Jimmy Garoppolo. This time it seems much more likely that it will be true because they don't need to get a trade partner. They can just see ya. Trey Lance obviously was supposed to be the guy this year, the guy they got 3 first-round draft picks tied up in. Didn't happen, and when he's played, he's looked like the least effective of the 49ers quarterbacks over the last couple of years. And then obviously they had the Brock Purdy thing this year. Put up crazy numbers. The production was through the roof. Incredible story. PFF grade never quite matched that, but then you have the complicating factor of also the dude like tore his elbow to pieces and now is on the shelf for at least 6 months potentially, and who knows, maybe more if it's Tommy John and blah, blah, blah. So also, by the way, Tom Brady just retired. So a potential option for them that might have ticked a lot of boxes, short-term, very good team, blah, 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 doesn't seem to be an option anymore. So where does that leave them?
You know, I still, as an outsider, not in the building, I still want to see what Trey Lance is.
Right.
Like we just haven't seen a lot of Trey Lance like play the sport of football in the past like 5 seasons, which is a problem.
Like ever, yeah.
But I would still like to see it. But I obviously understand that in the building they feel like this is they don't want to mess up what is a really good core of players, right? And this makes it so much more difficult. Like I'm still like, again, I still kind of believe in Trey Lance. He was a 3rd overall pick, so like there's probably something there. You still have Kyle Shanahan, who makes every quarterback look very good. Mm-hmm. So like again, outside of the building, I'm Trey Lance, I think, is the way to go. But inside the building, I can understand why. But it's funny though, because like let's look at the UFAs, right? Who, if you're gonna spend a moderate amount of money, you're not gonna like spend like huge amount on a quarterback. Who's the best quarterback that fits the 49ers roster right now? Well, it's Jimmy Garoppolo. Like that's the problem. Like that's he is continues to be the perfect fit, placeholder to a certain degree, like he was last season, right? When before he got injured. So,
but that's the thing with him is like, even forget the kind of play or the potential cap to his how good he can be or blah blah blah. Just from his injury history, it makes sense that they were trying to move on from him. Like, just you literally can't trust that he will be there at the sharp end of the season any year. So it makes perfect sense that they were trying to go in a different direction anyway. That obviously hasn't changed. In fact, it stayed the same, and it's just more evidence that has to happen. So if you're even if you brought him back, you're still in the position of, at the very minimum, there needs to be a contingency plan that can step in and do the same thing. Now, maybe that is Brock Purdy.
Well, that's again, the thing. So you still have Purdy and Lance like on the roster on rookie deals. So it's like,
but if Lance isn't the starter next year, you almost have to trade him, right? Otherwise, what do we do? We're just burning 3 draft picks.
Yeah, burning a lot of draft picks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like I don't know who the. I just think like the issue is going to be. Where do they think they are at quarterback? Like, how much money do they feel like they need to spend at quarterback in free agency? Like, we're assuming that in this world, they don't like Trey Lance.
Right.
Brock Purdy's injury is not going to get better anytime soon before the season starts. So, like, now you're looking at a free agent quarterback, and it's like, are you going – I mean, I know there's, like there's not going to be a great amount of free agency quarterbacks. Like Lamar Jackson obviously is going to be franchise tags or whatever, or he'll sign. So it's like, man, like what? Like then what are we talking about here? Like, do you just do the whole Jimmy G thing again? But maybe now, I say again, not with Jimmy G, but do you do it with? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know who's left for them to do this with, other than Lance, Purdy, or Jimmy.
What do you think in this offense is, like, if Kyle Shanahan is looking for a quarterback, what are the traits he's looking for to execute this offense at a really high level? Because the weird thing is, Lance doesn't seem to be that. Whatever you think it should be, it doesn't seem that Lance is the guy, which is what makes it so fascinating that he was the guy that they traded the 3 first round picks to get. And as you said, we're dealing with a stupidly small sample size for Trey Lance. Like, he has in his NFL career 124 dropbacks. Like, that's nothing. 102 pass attempts. Like, we're talking nothing. But in that time, he has a turnover-worthy play rate of almost 4%, which is high, right? Like, he's making mistakes. And it feels like the thing that made Brock Purdy look so good is being able to paint by numbers and not screw it up.
Yeah.
And that was always the sort of, if Jimmy G has a flaw, it's that every now and again he's going to make one of those terrible mistakes, and that's where the problem arises. But like, it feels like if Shanahan gets a quarterback that just does what he tells him to do, or like paints by numbers, just takes the open stuff and doesn't make a mess of it, he will get that guy cooking. And then where he runs it, like the difference between Jimmy G winning games and Nick Mullins and CJ Beathard or whoever losing games is that those guys make more mistakes than he does. And those mistakes are what transforms like production and wins into just production, not wins.
I will say that I think that, you know, taking Trey Lance with his skill set coming out was a choice to say, okay, well, you know, he's like, even if he's not the greatest passer in the world, like now I'm getting more out of my running game. I'm getting some scramble ability. And I'm good enough. I'm Kyle Shanahan. I'm good enough to do the paid by numbers thing with literally anyone.
Right.
And I think he can fit this offense around Trey Lance if he needs to. So I don't know if it's necessarily that like he doesn't fit in the Kyle Shanahan offense, because I think they wanted to do some different stuff. You know, they wanted to play more pistol. They wanted to run more read option, do all that stuff. So I think there's a chance that he still feels like that's the way to go. And I think that's also just interesting from Shanahan's perspective, which is like he's been so good at this particular thing and just getting these guys to the right read over the middle of the field, no turnovers, and we have this really good running game and really good yak receivers, and I just need you to do this like one thing. And even him saying, okay, well, I need to expand it. Like eventually this is going to come to an end, and it kind of didn't with Purdy. Now, Purdy is obviously a different quarterback than Jimmy G, and I think he expands the offense in a way that I think Kyle probably liked. Throwing the ball outside the numbers once in a while, like, hey, we have really good receivers, let's throw them the ball outside,
and extending
sometimes.
the play and extending the scramble type passes.
Yeah, he just doesn't have the quick release and the zip that I think Jimmy has, which is why Jimmy can operate over the middle of the field.
Right. But doesn't it also feel like the one thing that undermines the entire offense is if you're going to make mistakes and create turnovers? It's like, you know, he can, I think that's the thing, is he can get production and offensive success out of literally any quarterback by the paint by numbers thing. But the difference between like that being successful and winning games and not is how many times are you going to throw the ball to a linebacker? Yeah. Because if you do that 2 times a game, those are possessions we can't make up. Now, maybe they are if the defense stays as amazing as it is, but like that's the thing that undermines all of that. And that's the one sort of the biggest flaw right now in what we've seen in the really small sample size of Trey Lance. The other thing that I find interesting is I was as in love with anybody with the prospects of what Trey Lance was going to allow Kyle Shanahan to do with that offense. But it almost feels like he doesn't need it anymore because he traded for Christian McCaffrey, and the sort of collective of McCaffrey, Juszczyk, Debo, George Kittle, Brandon Ayuk, like all these guys together, A, is the best group of skill position players in the NFL. B, they're all like matchup nightmares, and deployed collectively, it's like I don't need any wrinkles. Like this is already unstoppable. Again, if you give me just a paint by numbers guy, like this guy can't fail.
We win 10 straight games,
right? Like if as long as he doesn't throw the ball to a safety twice a game, there's no way this can lose. So like I don't need the extra stuff anymore. Like maybe I did when we threw the 3 first-round picks to go get him, but now I just need a guy who's not going to turn the ball over.
And then you can find that guy in free agency for not $30 million, right? For like a lot less than that, even if it's just a 1 year or 2 year deal. I think you can find that. Though I just don't know. I'm looking at the free agents at quarterback, and there's not a lot.
But that's where I think it becomes kind of interesting. Like, does a guy like Kyle Shanahan, understanding everything we just talked about, say, if you give me Teddy Bridgewater for $5 million a year, like I can make that guy look like a Pro Bowler.
I probably thinks that way.
Right.
He probably thinks that way.
I mean, that wouldn't,
because Teddy Bridgewater is a good quarterback.
Sure, relatively, but that, and also he's just come from the same system.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
but like, everyone's going to start. I mean, we were talking Tom Brady at the start of this. Obviously, that's theoretically off the table now. But like, that's the kind of quarterback people are going to be talking about, like legitimate, proven caliber, high level starters. But actually, or like a Jacoby Brissett, can Kyle Shanahan actually look at this and say, I can shop in the bargain basement bin and actually turn any one of these Muppets into a Pro Bowler as long as he doesn't turn the ball over?
Well, you almost think it's not. You might as well,
like
because you're still trying to figure out. Like, yeah, you take a Brissett, Dalton, Bridgewater, 1-year deal, whatever it may be, less than 10 million, 5 million, whatever it is, and then you still kind of work with the fact that, hey, I have these two kind of potential wild cards in my back pocket on rookie deals, and I'm okay with them, and I can I have confidence in myself to say Andy Dalton, who by the way had a pretty good season this year, might be back to like those baseline Andy Dalton levels rather than the last 2 years with the Cowboys and the Bears. And hey, that's Andy Dalton fits that system tremendously.
Yeah,
making the right decisions, getting the ball to the skill position players, like you could do that. So yeah, I think that probably is what they end up doing.
I also think, by the way, that they can you can never sort of sacrifice a big chunk of the season, but you can work on the basis that, hey, Brock Purdy by week 8 is going to be healthy. Like, I don't even need a year-long starter. I need a guy that can get me through 8 games, like almost like the Browns did with Brissett this year. It's like theoretically the white knight is riding in on week 11. Like, how can we get to week 11 in a viable situation? Like, the 49ers are potentially looking at this and saying, I don't need a guy that's going to play from week 1 through the Super Bowl. I need a guy that can get me through 8 games and be 5-3. Like, who's that guy? And that could be any of these people, essentially.
Yeah, I think the issue is like, whatever. I still don't really believe in Brock Purdy. I know the sample size keeps getting bigger and bigger, but it's like now he's going to be coming off the UCL. As you said, the PFF grade, just like Jimmy Garoppolo, never matched the actual like EPA per play or yards per attempt or anything like that. So it's like, well, like now you're going to get into the same situation where you're like, hey, he keeps winning games, and then you sign him to the big deal, like they signed Garoppolo to the big deal, and then you're trying to trade him.
Right. And I'm sad. I think I'm sad because I think the elbow injury potentially changes everything. Yeah. But that was becoming a really sort of fascinating dynamic of the longer he plays like this, the harder it is to argue against it. And even if you're of the opinion that like the majority of the credit goes to Kyle Shanahan and their skill position players and blah, like it almost doesn't matter. Like the fact that he is the other piece that creates 35 points a game, like it doesn't make a difference how good he is.
I just still believe, I think what I'm always going to get back to is I still believe right now in Lance to do the same thing. Yeah. Again, has it been good in that small sample size? Right. No, but he's still a young kid when he was drafted.
Sure.
With not a lot of experience, so it's like I still believe that there's so much potential there.
To me, the biggest, not even a knock on Lance, but the biggest sort of caution for the Trey Lance thing would be almost from day one, the 49ers have been very reserved with their like praise and just description of Trey Lance as the starter in this. Like, generally speaking, no matter what the guy is playing like or how it's going or what the performance looks like, teams are endlessly effusive with their praise of the guy that's supposed to be the future. Like, even look at the Jets now, right? Zach Wilson was benched and made the number 3 quarterback because he created a toxic locker room by refusing to take any responsibility for his own terrible play, right? Despite that, the team is still out there saying, oh, we believe in Zach. It's a good reset for him. Like, he's going to be our guy. We haven't given up on him. Like, it's all going to be fine. Don't worry about it. Like, it can't go any worse than what's happened to him, and they're still defending into the hilt. Lance Because when he played like 100 and whatever snaps it was, and they've never really been like, oh, we're really excited. He's looking great. It's all going well. Like he's just been unlucky. They've always been kind of, you know, a little bit reserved with how they're actually describing this whole thing, which doesn't fit right to me.
No, it makes me a little nervous for sure. That it's just never going to be. But it's like, I keep going back to the same thing because it's like, where does it have to be for him to be a successful player as a San Francisco 49er under Kyle Shanahan? And it obviously, it's different if you played almost anywhere else, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if he could do this in whatever. I don't want to name like, you know, quote unquote bad offensive coordinators, but like this is the spot where it's like you still feel comfortable even if he's not making the smartest decisions every time because he does so much other things well, and the paint by numbers thing, and you're hoping that it's enough.
Like even there was a bunch of press conference clips doing the rounds the last couple of days where I don't know if Kyle Shanahan actually gets a disproportionate amount of dumbass questions from 49ers media, or if it just seems that way because of the ones that end up going on Twitter. But somebody basically asked him like, oh, does your offense need to change because 4 quarterbacks got hurt? And he was like, well, obviously not if you actually look at how they got hurt. Idiot. He didn't say idiot. I added that part. But even then, when he was sort of closing the door for the second time on Jimmy Garoppolo, it felt like that's a perfect chance to be able to pivot and be like, Trey Lance is our guy. Remember, he was our starter. Like, it's going to be great. He just got unlucky, got hurt, blah. You know, pivot the conversation and be like, hey, let's talk up Trey Lance. Instead, it was just like, no, we're going to drop kick Jimmy out of the room. Okay, thanks, bye. See you tomorrow. You know, it's weird, I think, the way that they're treating that.